Hello, bronies, it's me, Clayton, and I just saw the most recent My Little Pony episode a little bit early. Secrets and Pies, written by Josh Hamilton. Now, Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash have always had a strong character dynamic ever since Season 1 with the episode Griffin the Brush-Off. And this character dynamic has been used again and again for entertaining episodes, and that is especially the case here once again, as we see the two personalities clash off each other over something that's pretty mundane but has turned into a rather humorous episode: pies. Let's get to the story, shall we? The story is that Pinkie Pie has been making several decadent pies for Rainbow Dash for almost any occasion, and it's a bit too much for her. So Rainbow Dash decides to distribute the pies out to others, or just get them out of their sight, just so she doesn't have to eat all the pies, but she can spare Pinkie Pie's feelings, so she's not upset. Unfortunately, this gets Pinkie Pie upset because she's never seen Rainbow Dash eat one of her pies, and she tries to investigate in order to find out where the pie's been going and what's been happening to them. Now, the story here is actually pretty simplistic, and it feels like it is sort of something the writers just came up with in order to fill out a 22-minute episode. But as far as premises that are pretty simplistic, it does do well with it. And it does make sense to use Pinkie Pie for this type of story. Pinkie Pie, as a character, usually does let little things turn into big problems or big adventures, after all. And honestly, the way she acts in this episode and the way that her frustration builds up sort of reminds me of the Season 1 episode Party of One, albeit with a little less insanity. In Party of One, her persona completely flicked off and she went into full-on crazy mode at the end. Here, it's just her frustration going overboard after she's tried so many times to get Rainbow Dash to eat her pies. It makes sense that this episode happens way later in the series, where Pinkie's mental instability would be less of a problem. The voice acting is of course excellent, with Andrea Libman and Ashley Ball doing good performances as both Pinkie Pie and Dash. I particularly liked one Imagine spot where Pinkie imagines Rainbow Dash as this demonic pony villain who destroys her pies with laser eyes. Try saying that 3 times fast. Anyways, this is one of those episodes where there's definitely not a whole lot to say about the story, but there definitely is a lot to say about the comedy. Pinkie Pie's constant frustrations over these little incidents is definitely the highlight, but there's also the running plot of Tank having dairy poisoning from eating Rainbow Dash's pies, as well as the class hamster that Cheer Lee has having the same problem, and also the fact that Applejack points out that she could have said that Rainbow Dash could be honest from the start. Normally, I'd say that's Applejack's an example of the show not having Applejack do anything, but considering that this was a conflict that was held specifically between Pinkie and Rainbow Dash and was something that Rainbow likely didn't think about until Pinkie Pie made her think about it, it does make a little more sense why Applejack wouldn't be the one to do much of anything and why Rainbow Dash had to handle most of the conflict herself. And the actual resolution of the conflict is something that's been seen before, but also something that's done fairly well, with Rainbow Dash having to eat a giant garbage pie, or at least thinking that she had to, in order to make things up for Pinkie. It does show that Rainbow Dash, while being a little bit brash and arrogant, she's always been that way, and even though it's lessened over the years, she still certainly has little bits of that. She's certainly not flawless. It does show that despite those things, that Rainbow Dash still cares deeply about her friends and their feelings, and when they're hurt, she does feel legitimately sorry and wants to do anything she can to help alleviate the pain. So the resolution to the conflict isn't exactly as good as the build-up to it, as most of it is just them reconciling with each other and then giving each other a hug, and then that's kind of it. But the build-up to it, as well as Pinkie Pie's investigation, which looks very similar to her investigation and mystery on the Friendship Express, ultimately makes this a fun episode. Not one of the best, but one of the more entertaining episodes, and definitely one with more comedy than I was expecting. I'll give Secrets and Pies a 7.5 out of 10. See you next time.